Hi, this is Magnus and this is Magnus Hobby Channel. Today I'm going to paint and modify this Tabletop World house. Tabletop World makes, I would say, the best miniature houses on the market for either D&D and other RPGs and the tabletop games. So I'm gonna put lights into this, I'm gonna put glass into this using UV resin, and I'm gonna paint this up, put it on a nice base, make it a nice little mini diorama if you want that, or you will be able to remove it and use it in your tabletop games. So stick around and I will show you the entire process and how to do it. Now we're gonna start working on the roof, and the reason I start with the roof is because it's a large portion of the building. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I have done these shingles in earthy brown wood colors, the way it would look natural, and that comes out pretty good. The problem is that the buildings gets very drab doing that, since, well, naturally a stone building with a wood roof with no paint on it would look rather stale. So instead I'm gonna go with red. That might not be a natural color for wood, but these guys have painted it, so who cares? And by using a white undercoat, and I've also undercoated black before that, the red will come through pretty good. It will become a strong color. And I always water it. I'm gonna use my wet palette like this, so we can see. And that will make the colors come through a little bit easier. And how much water should you use? Well, as you can see, I'm gonna try this out. I'm not certain before I've done it how much, because the color, this color has become a little bit goopy, then you need more of it, and so on and so forth. You really have to try it out. Using a wet palette, however, is, well, I can't recommend it enough. Everyone should use a wet palette. It's one of these things that separates more experienced painters from inexperienced painters, why the inexperienced painters don't get the same results. One of those reasons is the lack of a proper wet palette. It makes a huge difference. I'm just going to keep doing this. As you can see, we are plugging away with this, and we're basically trying to get a nice even red color across the entire roof. Since I use this a little bit more diluted red, even though it is corn red, so it has really nice coverage anyway, but it makes it a lot easier to get into all of those cracks, because these roofs are amazing, and that means there's a lot of details and there's a lot of cracks, and if you miss them, especially when you use a white undercoat, that's going to shine through. You're not gonna miss that. That is one of the advantages of starting with a black undercoat. It's a lot more forgiving. But since we're using white, we're also getting a much starker red color. And I actually prefer that on these houses. But as you can see, I'm just plugging along and going over certain parts several times to get a nice even coverage. Okay, now the entire roof has been painted. We're gonna let it sit and dry, and then we're gonna try to wash it and highlight it. I think it turned out pretty good. Now it's time to get working on the stones and the wood for this. I'm going to use Rhinox hide for the wood, the base of the wood, and I'm gonna start with that. And after that, I'm going to start to work with the stone. But first this. We take some Rhinox hide and we use it, put it on our wet palette. That way it will go through nicely onto these beams. Once again, one of the advantages of using a white undercoat rather than black on this project is that you can see it creates the grain in one single stroke. It doesn't take a lot of effort to get strokes. You can see the grain in the wood. That would not be possible with a dark color to begin with. We are coming along nicely. We are painting all these beams. This takes a while, since you have to be careful. You don't want to get it on the stones. It's not a disaster if you get it on the stones. The stones will be painted. But the nicer and the neater we can do this, the better it will be. So I'm trying to keep this as clean as possible. You should try that as well. You will find out later why, since the way we're gonna wash these stones, we need as much of a white surface left as possible. But it's not a disaster. If you miss a spot, for example, I've missed there, you can either go back with a brush and put some more white on it, or just don't care, because we're gonna fix that later. And there we go. We have done the first base coat of the wooden pillars. We're gonna have to go back to it, and we're also gonna dry brush it and highlight it and wash it. And the next step now is to put those wood details on the roof as well. And I've decided to make the window shutters red as the roof as well as the door. And that is to break up the monotony which will otherwise become apparent, since there will be a lot of gray black stones and then these dry timbers which are quite dark. I think the red will make it pop. So here we go. We have put most of the red on. We're gonna work this over a couple of times more with shades and highlights, as I said before. But well, I think we're gonna start to attack the stones on the bottom half, and so you can see what my plan is. This is what we're gonna use to pick out the stones. The good thing with this is that we'll make the recesses a lot darker and create instant shades, and we'll create a nice rocky surface. Then we're gonna go back on it and pick out individual stones to make the building a little bit more individual. But this is a great way to start. This is why it was important to keep all those stones as white as possible. And remember to shake that bottle properly. Then we're just gonna put this contrast color on, and this is the good thing about this. As you can see, it will create a nice rocky surface straight out of the bottle. And when we go back on this, we will be able to make individual stones and so on and so forth. This is a real simple way to get this base coat on. So if you think, oh, but contrast sucks. No, it doesn't. It's a tool, and this is one of the steps we're going to use to create basically shading. If you think this is wrong, in that case, null oil is wrong as well. So I'm just going to keep working through here, being careful. As you can see, I leave certain spots. That is because I'm going to go back to that with a smaller brush if need be. You don't have to be super neat with this. We want to eliminate all the white spots now. We don't want any white to be showing at these rocks now. As you can see, I left the wheel open inside. I'm gonna go back and do the wood on it, but if I had painted it, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So by leaving that, I can go back over that at a later time, pick it out, make it a nice color, whatever color I want, if I want it wood colored or if I want it painted, and so on and so forth. Just try to make sure that all the color, all these spots gets covered. Can be some surface tension in the color, which will make it harder for it to get in everywhere. But just keep doing that and you'll be done in just a few minutes. As you can see, this goes really quickly. What you can do later is you can either paint individual rocks in a different color, or you can dry brush these stones, or if you're just in a hurry and you just want to put this on the battlefield, this will be fine to leave as it is. If you do decide to dry brush it, let the color sit and dry for a good while. I would let it sit overnight, because the dry brushing might otherwise remove some of the contrast color that you have put on here today. So this is a typical example of what I will leave for the end of the day to paint, because you want the contrast color to really get stuck in there, and that can take a while. In my experience, contrast colors rubs off a lot easier than normal colors, so letting them sit there, really getting a grip on the undercoat is perfect. As you can see, we've pretty much done an entire side of the house in a minute or two. And the fine thing is, as you can see, the black will recede back into the rocks. Another good thing is, if you do it like this, you can decide on how much time do you want to put into this project. This will look absolutely fine. It will look good on the tabletop. But you can go further if you want to. This is just the first step. But you will be able to play with it, which is, for a lot of people, the entire purpose of painting a model. Right now it looks kind of messy because the contrast color, this is the first base coat thoroughly yet, and we haven't started picking out the details. One of the things that I've learned when you start out as a painter is that these messy stages, when everything just looks weird, the white color, everything, it just doesn't look very good. But when you know that once you finish all these things off, you put on a shade and highlights, this will look great. But I know a lot of painters would say, a lot of beginner painters would say that, oh, this is not going to turn out great. Well, it will. And as you progress in the hobby, you will learn these steps, and you will learn that, oh, but this will look good. You just need to dare to take some chances. I will just do a light dry brush of Mephisto red on the red roof, and the reason for this is to create a little bit of variation. After this, we're gonna hit it with some Agrax Earthshade, which will further pick out the details. But using a little dry brush like this is real simple. You can be rather heavy on it. As you can see, it will pick out the raised areas. As you can see there, it became a little bit too much there. It doesn't really matter. It will come out fine. Let's try to hit all those raised areas. That's all you have to do. And then this side as well. As you can see, I haven't done the doors yet. I will do those later. I want to do this large section right now before I'm gonna go to bed, so they can sit and dry, and I can see the result tomorrow and decide how to move on. One of the good things with dry brushing is that doesn't take a lot of drying time. So I will now take this Agrax Earthshade, and I'm just gonna work it in to those grains. That will accentuate the highlighting and create nice shadows, and it will really make this roof come alive. If you want to go further, you could make weathering on this and basically make stains where the water has created stains. There should be stains right here, for example, underneath the chimney. You could use some Nuln Oil to simulate that ash and soot gets washed down by the rain. Have little black streaks there. This is all you have to do to give the roof a lot more finished look. And once more, when you look at this like this and it's all wet, it will not look like this when it's done. So it's hard to compare, but if you have done this a couple of times, you know what the effect will be. Just make sure you don't use the gloss normal agri searching. And here we go. Here we have a tabletop standard ready house. This will be excellent to just use in a battlefield. No one will notice the lack of details, but we will be going back to this house in a future episode and start picking out the details. We're also going to make a scenic base and make a little diorama out of this so it can be stored in a cabin and it will look great when people come by and look at it. So thanks for sticking around. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you the next time.